Today, we're looking at Robert Oster's Khaki. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Robert Oster's Khaki is kind of a brownish green ink. It's got some like green tones going. At least it appears to me. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a fountain pen Revolution Himalaya with their flex nib to take my notes for this video. Before we look at the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately dunk it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we don't see any of the greens that I feel like come up in some of the writings. It looks very light. We see some gold tones and some brown tones. What you would expect when mixing a khaki. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And we see the same kind of gold tone across the bottom, the brown tone up top, but there's a couple little spots where you see it feels like specks of green. But I could be seeing that. I'm not 100% sure, so let me know in the comments if you're seeing those couple specks of green, or if my eyes are playing tricks on me staring into lights. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles it really well. That extra fine turns to about a fine, but it is totally readable. It didn't blow out, it only fattened up some. Water is all that it's going to take. When we look at water with only 30 seconds, not only are we seeing some of the dots of the rhodia paper, we're starting to see some of the white of the rhodia paper come out. So water, perfect. It's absolutely removing and reactivating. Pen flush did everything water did, nothing more, nothing special, and no need for it to clean. Bleach, it looks like the ink was not there. It looks like I went perfectly around that area and said, yep, I'm going to act like there was a bleach test. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Robert Oster's Khaki has a viscosity of 2.32, making it right in normal without a problem. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Robert Oster's Khaki has an average dry time of 15 seconds, making it normal. But more to me, what I see is while it's on the slightly faster side of normal, its viscosity was on a slightly wetter side of normal. They're right about in the same spot on both bell curves, which is always interesting when inks do that. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and great shading all over it. This is a great shade and great shading. This is very nice. If I didn't already have a favorite brown, this might make its way to it. But look at it. The K starts as a nice mid-tone, gets to dark, light tone at the top of the H, back to mid, back to dark. Great in the 1.1. Extra fine, no feather spread, halo sheen. Unfortunately, no shading with the 1.19 seconds to dry. We go to the medium, and strangely, it becomes a lighter base tone. No feather spread, halo sheen, and because of that lighter base tone, we do get really nice shading. The A in lazy is much darker than the rest of the word. The D in dog is much darker than the rest of the word. The word seconds, the sec of seconds, much darker than everything around it. Jumps, starts really light and gets dark. It's great
in the medium. And it's weird because it reversed. It was darker and then lighter in the medium. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium show us almost no color variation, although the medium we got a bunch. And the smear test, I believe you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, but we have crazy ghosting. It's Tomoe River. It ghosts. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread. It has halo. The entire thing is haloed. I just bumped my head into the camera. I'm sorry. Not for my head. If I shook the camera, I'll find out in post. Probably should come up with something a little nicer and easier to work with. It has no halo. It has almost no shading. I said no halo. It has halo. It has no sheen. Almost no shading. It's very hard to see it. Oster looks a little lighter of the word than Robert. So it's almost none. There is some of it, but the halo is consistent all over. Extra fine. No feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading whatsoever. 17 seconds to dry. It's more because of the paper than the ink. The medium, same exact tone with the extra fine. No feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 29 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium show us that we're not going to get any color variation. We didn't, but the scrubby of the extra fine has a halo that we saw with the 1.1, but not in the extra fine writing sample. So it's neat. It means it's there. We just have to find the way to keep getting it. The smear test, you likely could not recover this if you smeared while you were writing. All right. Rhodia. Rhodia has no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. It's a great tone of brown. It's really nice. Same exact tone of brown for the extra fine with no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does offer some very nice gradual shading, like when you look at the color chart and it goes from white to black and you see all the grays. That's the way that this shades, like what we see happening in the J of jumps. We see it happening in the B of brown. We see it happening in the D of dog on the bottom of the 8, but we don't see it all over the writing. Largely the writing is a darker tone. It took 8 seconds to dry. The medium, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading with the medium. I didn't see any shading in the writing sample. It took 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for the extra fine shows us some shading. It shows us more than we got in the writing sample. The medium shows us none. We got none. And the smear test says I could likely recover this. And I believe it. Monokaki, M-O-N-O-K-A-K-I. I like this paper. I use it for some of the experiments I'm doing on ink on the side. It's a thin paper. Just a paper worth trying out for people. I think this is good. I prefer this over Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, except this scrubby where I'm putting it on stupid thick. And that's a scratch in the page, obviously. There we do have ghosting because it's a thinner paper. It's not ghosting as bad as the Tomoe River. The 1.1 is no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does give us plenty of shading in the 1.1. O is lighter on the bottom than it is on the top. The T is darker than the E. The top of the H is lighter than the rest of the H. It's nice here. It's nice and gradual. It definitely shows the shading in a pleasant way. Not stark line differences of here's your light and here's your dark. Extra fine, a noticeably lighter tone than we got with the 1.1. No feather, spread, halo, sheen. And we do get a bunch of shading. Again, that very light to very dark, and it graduates into it. So it doesn't do stark stuff. But when I look at the I in quick, it's lighter and it works its way darker into the K. The T is much lighter and works much darker into the HE. Over starts very light and gets much darker. Lazy starts very dark and gets much lighter. This is a very nice shading on this paper, which is not a true white. It's far from a true white. It's more of a cream. 7 seconds to dry. Medium, no feather, spread, halo, sheen. We get the same shading effect because we have the same tone that we got with the extra fine. So the brown starts much darker, gets much lighter, gets a little darker again. The fox starts lighter and gets darker. Jumps starts lighter and gets darker. It's very nice on this paper. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium show us plenty of color variation. We were hoping for it. We did get it. And the smear test, you could likely not recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Mogi Paper. Mogi Paper gave us no bleeding, minor ghosting. I don't think it stops you from using the back of the page. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, nice shading spots. Where it shows shade, it shows it really nice. The loop in the R is a much darker spot. The B looks much darker than the letters around it. R looks much lighter, so it looks really nice here. Extra fine, extra fine, a noticeably lighter tone. I don't like this tone on this paper with the extra fine. No feather spread, halo sheen, almost no real shade to show of. There's little spots that are a little bit darker. The LA is a little bit darker than the rest of Lazy. The F is a little bit darker than the rest of Fox. The R is a little bit darker than the rest of Over, but it doesn't really stand out, and I don't care for the tone of brown here. The medium is a noticeably darker tone. I like this darker tone here. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, absolutely no shading on this paper. It's a little more absorbent paper. 5 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We did have spots of color variation with the extra fine. The smear test says you could likely recover it. I tend to believe it. And Moleskin. So I decided my 3 guest papers would all start with the letter M. Yeah, see, choosing from a pile. Monocoque, Mogi, and Moleskin. A mole. Okay. The extra fine was not horrible. It does have bleed spots. It nowhere near touches the page underneath. You could use the back of the page if you're not super picky. Pocket-sized notebook, go for it with this. Would I want to take notes in a Moleskin notebook? No, because I could never have the option of using the back of the page. But here I think you could. Don't use a medium. It comes through. The medium. The medium has no spread, but god-awful feathering. It is disgusting to look at. It's Big Bird for Thanksgiving dinner type feathering. It's just all over. It's ew. And the color doesn't look great here. Extra fine. The extra fine had no spread. It's got disgusting feathering all over it. Certain parts look entirely blurry, and other parts just, I stare at the feathers. No halo sheen or shade, 2 seconds to dry. Scrubby shows us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it. The camera shows some. In person, I don't see any, but there's none here. The smear test, you could likely recover if you did smear. So there's that. That makes it a good walk-around ink with this paper. That is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Robert Oster's Khaki, I would prefer to find an ink that complements the color on the page. And I've chosen Noodler's 54th Massachussetts because it's such a great blue-black. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. Now, what do I think of Robert Oster's Khaki? I think this is a very interesting brown where I felt in the chromatography I saw some kind of greens, but in the writing I see these kind of yellowish orange undertones, so it's really very interesting. It makes for this to be a very interesting brown. And I was not expecting it because khaki is not normally a color I think of that I would enjoy as ink, but this one's not too bad. It's kind of nice. Thanks for watching.